Watch this.
After a reported error in one Idaho county's May primary results, a candidate has called into question the state's voting integrity and the trustworthiness of absentee ballots. Idaho's top election official breaks down the post-election process. Plus, homeowners in Boise can expect to pay more in property taxes. Not as much as originally expected, but still an increase for residents, whose mayor says the city's hands are tied when it comes to paying bills for Boise. After years of approvals, then reversing those decisions, even a petition going all the way up to Idaho's highest court, Interfaith Sanctuary is back on the agenda tonight for a city council discussion. So, how did we get here? Start off with good news. That's what I'm talking about. We have good news for Boise homeowners. The city's proposed property tax that increase is getting smaller, which is a bit like being told the bear chasing you is now moving at a brisk walk, but still, it's coming, just not quite as fast. The city is looking to lower its proposed tax increase, and Justin Core talked with the mayor about the new numbers and why she believes the state is making it harder for cities to pay their bills.
Property taxes are set to go up for Boiseans, but not by as much as we thought. 2 weeks ago, what was going to be a 4% hike, the most they could by state law, will now likely be a 2.7% hike, after a new proposal was unveiled in Tuesday's City Council work session.
When I hear from residents, what matters to them is that our community remain affordable. We want homes for our kids. We expect firefighters to arrive when we call them. We want to be a safe city, and our police department is fully staffed. And then you want to be able to walk to parks and enjoy life in your neighborhood and have great jobs. The city budget works on all of that to make sure that we remain a safe and welcoming and affordable city for everyone.
Boise Mayor Lauren McLean says this new lower rate hike proposal is thanks to values on new construction being higher than expected, the state delaying increasing retirement costs, and the sunsetting of the urban renewal district. Bottom line, they had another $2.9 million in the budget, and the mayor says she wanted to make things as easy as she could on Boiseans while still giving them the services they deserve.
I think about that every year when we work on our budget, and what it means to raise our revenue as our own costs rise to provide service. And what I've found is that Boiseans understand that investing in this community matters. Folks said yes in November to a parks and open space levy. In the conversations that I have, we know it's tough, but we also know that we want our community to stay safe, that we have officers on the ground and firefighters in fire stations, and that our neighborhoods have parks and all those services in between.
The mayor also says budget writing for Idaho cities does not have to be this hard.
The state really constrains the revenue that we have.
The mayor says the state limits what cities can do to pay their bills by capping annual property tax hikes to 3% plus maybe a foregone hike, and budget growth to 90% of value from new construction, and only allowing one type of tax.
This is a statewide issue. You probably saw the news in Meridian, they're taking the 3% plus foregone. Star doing the same. I just spent a couple days with mayors from around the country at the Conference of Mayors, and what I heard, once again, is that every other city has so many more tools. So in cities in Idaho, we rely on property tax. The sales tax that's generated here goes to the state. They give us a little bit back in a formula, but the city doesn't keep those dollars. We don't have a local option tax where you can say an extra penny for Boise that's going to cover police or fire or other things. And so what a city has in Idaho is property tax. And as we've seen this perfect storm of the state limiting what we can take, actually reducing the value of growth that we get. So we believe that growth should pay for itself. The state is saying growth should only pay for 90% of itself. And then as costs escalate, we have all of that happening at once. So we're balancing the impact that the property tax decisions have on our residents with the expectation that we provide the level of service we always have that makes Boise the city that she is as we grow. It's tough. It's tough.
Boise City Council will consider the new proposed budget for the 2027 fiscal year in some upcoming public meetings. They're going to vote to adopt it later this year. You can attend in person or just watch it as it happens there at City Hall online.
I feel like this is one of the discussions that not only Boise has had, but several other areas, right? Because we consistently see levies and bonds, and those are getting addressed on voter ballots. And those take based on our coverage, we've said about 3 years on average to get one passed?
Yeah, and it's tough because then you have cities and counties, at least they say, having to run additional campaigns just to get, pay their bills to get their budget figured out. Treasure Valley Partnership working with, trying to get some bills on the docket for this next session to remove some of those caps, maybe allow some more cities local option sales tax so that they can just raise the revenue themselves and not having to keep going back to voters.
Yeah, that's an interesting, I will obviously be watching the session, but that'll be cool to see. All right, Justin, thank you. Well, Interfaith Sanctuary is back on the agenda for Boise City Council. The city is reconsidering allowing Interfaith Sanctuary's move. That meeting starts in just about an hour, so let's take a look back at how we ended up here again. Interfaith Sanctuary. It's moved into a new home on West State Street that's triple the size of its old home on River Street. But now the city is considering making them move out again. In 2005, Interfaith Sanctuary started operating out of a warehouse on River Street, a space that hundreds of people came in and out of for food, water, and shelter. But by 2021, Interfaith had outgrown that space. So it applied for a conditional use permit to move into the Salvation Army building on West State Street. Boise Planning and Zoning rejected that permit in a 5-1 decision in 2022. Commissioners heard testimony from the public about the impacts of Interfaith's move. And people said their main concern was over the expected increased call volume to law enforcement in the area. So ultimately, it swayed the commission's decision.
Imagine how safe you would feel walking with 6 to 8 young children outside the current IFS location.
Interfaith appealed that decision to Boise City Council, and the council reversed Planning and Zoning's decision in April 2022, allowing Interfaith to move forward. Well, come April 2023, Interfaith secured an $8 million loan and broke ground on its new location. But it doesn't end there. Veterans Park neighborhood then filed a petition claiming council members made a mistake when they overturned a previous planning and zoning decision about the move. That June, an Ada County judge sided with Interfaith, giving the shelter the green light. So Veterans Park appealed that decision to the Idaho Supreme Court in the fall of 2024, saying the city did not comply with code when approving the move. In January 2025, Idaho's highest court ruled city council should never have been allowed to approve Interfaith Sanctuary's new shelter. Construction continued despite the back and forth in the courts. Then last summer, the shelter applied for another conditional use permit, which was approved in the fall of 2025. In January 2026, Interfaith opened its doors after closing its River Street location. And that brings us to tonight, where City Council will meet once again. Aspen Shepard will bring you the latest from that meeting tonight on the news at 10. If you have spent any time on Facebook, you know a single post can raise a lot of questions. Some of them are fair questions, some of them are misconceptions, and sometimes it can be really hard to tell the difference. Well, after losing the Republican primary for governor, Mark Fitzpatrick posted a lengthy Facebook post of an Owyhee County election audit, where he, Secretary of State Phil McGrain, and other election staff sat in the room and went through each ballot, checking the results. In it, Fitzpatrick raised questions about absentee ballots, touchscreen voting, a reporting error in Owyhee County, and how election results are verified. He said, quote, "These are just observations," and he's not alleging anything. So rather than debating those questions in the comment section, we took some of those questions directly to the office responsible for running Idaho's elections. Here's what Secretary of State Phil McGrain told us. At first mention, Mark Fitzpatrick says Phil McGrain specifically ordered the governor's race to be counted as part of the audit. So does every race get audited, or is it specific ones? We do a random draw. So a little over a week ago, we had a bingo ball machine and went through and drew 8 different counties around the state and then random precincts within those counties. So after every primary and general election, we will do hand count audits that are randomly selected.
Part of that is just to verify that the machines are working properly, that all the counties are following their practices, and really to give Idahoans confidence that the votes that were reported on election night are the votes that were cast.
Owyhee County was among the random precincts drawn, which made it confusing after there was a human error while entering results on Election Day. So it was asked, what happened there? What if someone hadn't said anything?
On election night, when we're all watching the news, looking at the results that are coming in, or going to Vote Idaho and looking at the results, the counties are either uploading or hand entering those results into that system. And in the case of Owyhee County, they were hand entering the results. So their machine was producing the results, then somebody went to a different computer to upload them to the state system. That way it's statewide, all the different results are reported. It was after the election that Owyhee County themselves noticed that there was a discrepancy, specifically in some of the races. The numbers didn't quite make sense. So in reviewing all of their information in the Canvas window, they made an update to that. So on election night, all the results are unofficial. That's one of the important things. We always highlight that on Vote Idaho. I think as you guys are reporting it, you highlight that. And really in that Canvas window is when the counties go through, they double check not just the results, but the number of people who showed up and voted, making sure that all of the different records match prior to the county commissioners certifying the results. Once they certify the results, that's when we do the selection for the audit. So it wasn't as a result of the audit that we found that. It was the county themselves doing their post-election processes that noticed, oh, there's a discrepancy, and they made sure that the right results were actually reported. When we did the audit, it was a perfect match. Everything lined up the way it should be, and that's really how the system should work.
And right now, not just in Idaho, but across the United States, there are discussions about the integrity of absentee ballots and how it's important for Americans to understand how voting works in their states and the many ways fraud could occur. Are there safeguards in place to avoid election fraud with absentee ballots?
One of the things people don't realize with absentees is we verify every registered voter prior to even mailing them an absentee ballot. A voter has to request it. And then when it comes in, not only do we verify the voter information, but we actually compare the signature on the absentee return envelope with the signature on their voter registration card or the signature on their driver's license. There's all sorts of verifications and safeguards that are put in place. I think what you see more and more is just different types of voters request ballots. So one of the narratives you see is, this candidate performed better in absentee versus this candidate performed on election day. That will happen. It really has to do with the demographics, who chooses. Either way, whether we had absentees or not, most of these voters are still going to vote. Some people took advantage of absentee voting because they're in situations where they just needed assistance. Some people did it for convenience or because they're traveling. There's a variety of reasons, but the systems, regardless of how someone votes, we always have safeguards. So if someone votes at the polls on election day, we're also making sure that they don't vote absentee, they don't vote in more than one county, for example. The safeguards are a really important part of that process.
More broadly, more questions are being raised about what's happening in California. They still count absentee votes after Election Day.
And I think one of the distinctions about Idaho compared to California is we have clear deadlines in terms of our rules. So one of the key distinctions, every ballot in Idaho must be cast by 8 p.m. on Election Day. Whether you're at a polling location and you're dropping a ballot or you're an absentee ballot, they have to be received by the county clerk by a date and time. That's distinctly different than what we're watching play out in California right now, where it just has to be postmarked by Election Day. So it can take weeks until the final ballots even arrive in a state like California versus here in Idaho. And that doesn't change the integrity of the election, but it really does change the perception about how the election is working. Because if it takes longer and longer, one of the things I've experienced throughout my career is people want to know the results. They look at election night as an important night. You know that reporting in the news, it's the same thing for us managing the website. And so this national conversation that's happening around elections and the differences between how states do things, I think California is highlighting that right now.
And also today, the Secretary of State's office officially wrapped up the 2026 primary election cycle and shared the results and findings of the post-election audits. McGrain says since Idaho started these audits in 2022, they have seen counties getting better at that process, and it's improving the system. Canvas shows that 312,140 Idahoans voted in the primary, which is approximately 30% of registered voters. And for those audits we talked about, those were in Ada, Butte, Canyon, Franklin, Gooding, Lemhi, Owyhee, and Power counties. Those happened between June 1st and June 5th. They say hand votes matched Canvas results in nearly all of the cases. A CUNA mom says her son started kindergarten full of energy and left traumatized. School reports show Emmett Flick, who has disabilities, was placed in seclusion several times between his kindergarten and second grade years. And his family believes many of those were inappropriate and potentially illegal. Our investigative reporter, Morgan Romero, has been looking into the use of seclusion in Idaho schools for months. Morgan, your series starts on this all tonight. It's a big, in-depth piece.
It is. And Hunter, this is a really complicated and sensitive subject that we're exploring. Like you said, I've been looking into this for months. The first story in our 3-part series tonight covers Emmett Flick's specific case in the CUNA school district. Our second story tomorrow looks at the broader issue of seclusion in local schools and Idaho's updated law surrounding the use of seclusion, the strict guardrails around what school staff can and cannot do. Our final piece, airing Thursday, covers experts' advice on alternative approaches. Emmett Flick is 8 years old. He has disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, among other disabilities, and a new fear he didn't have before elementary school: seclusion rooms, spaces inside some Idaho schools where kids, often with disabilities, are confined alone.
He was having accidents at school on a regular basis. And he's been potty trained since he was 3. Finally, one day I just said, "Emmett, why are you having accidents at school?" And he said, "Because I don't want to be locked in the bathroom." And I knew right then that that was because he has been placed in the seclusion room so many times that now he has a fear of being locked in spaces.
Seclusion is not just limited to those types of rooms. It can occur anywhere in a school, but it does have to be documented. Idaho updated its law in 2023 to say seclusion can only be used when a student's behavior puts themselves or others in imminent danger of serious bodily harm, and it cannot be used as punishment. But Emmett's records appear to tell a different story. Again, this series, called Secluded in School, begins tonight on the news at 10, Hunter, and it runs through Thursday.
Man, a tough situation.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to those full reports because there's a lot to this story.
Yeah, we have a lot of voices. We've talked to the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint, this family. We've talked to Superintendent Debbie Critchfield, Idaho Parents Unlimited. You'll hear from a lot of people over the next few days.
Morgan, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, now we are going to a story our Aspen Shumpert first brought you here on the 208. The Boise School District has settled a lawsuit with teacher Michelle Chung. Chung was diagnosed with Lyme disease after she says she went through years of exposure from mice in her classroom at West Junior High School. Now, the school district says it settled the lawsuit for $720,000. The district denied any wrongdoing, saying in a statement, in part, quote, "The district's decision to settle was motivated by a desire to focus resources on its core mission of educating and supporting students and staff and to preserve a safe, stable learning environment," end quote. Chung told us she will no longer be working for the district after her contract ends, which will be in August. She told us in a statement, in part, quote, "My focus has always been on protecting students and ensuring that classrooms meet the standards of safety and cleanliness that families, staff, and the community expect. Every student deserves to learn in an environment that is safe, sanitary, and conducive to education," end quote. Well, in case you missed it, we started a new monthly giving campaign to help Idaho nonprofits. It's in partnership with the Idaho Community Foundation and the 7 Cares Fund. Since the Gem State is a giving community, we are asking you to consider donating $7 to the nonprofits we highlight every single month, starting with Everybody House this June. They host several programs, including Everybody Eats. Volunteers are making sure kids across the Magic Valley are getting fed this summer. Scan the QR code on the bottom right of your screen to learn more about Everybody House and how to donate. So far, you have already raised more than $300 for the nonprofit.
Well, the cold front that brought in some very light rain to the Treasure Valley and some isolated storms to the mountains last night into the early morning hours of today continues to roll off to the east. Still seeing a few lightning strikes well outside our viewing area. Looks like some thunderstorm activity rolling through Lemhi County towards Salmon, but you can see we are clear and finally starting to dry up across the mountains where, yes, some rain and rumbles of thunder were coming and going throughout the morning hours. Now it's just some puffy clouds and blue sky. We're only in the 50s in McCall right now, mid 70s for Boise, low 70s in Twin Falls, notably cooler than yesterday, but not as cool as we're going to be tomorrow. So the rest of our evening will be breezy. Those breezy, cool winds will persist through the evening, letting up a bit after sunset, but then returning tomorrow. So expect winds in the afternoon right out of the northwest, 25 to 35 miles per hour. That will keep things feeling very cool tomorrow. We'll have abundant sunshine, but look at this, highs only in the upper 60s in Boise. We will wake up to some chilly temperatures. 46 degrees is my forecast overnight low for Boise, 48 in Mountain Home, mid 40s over in the Magic Valley as well. Stanley below freezing tomorrow. So an extra layer likely necessary early on. You may keep that layer on in the afternoon with those highs reaching for 70 across the Treasure Valley, upper 60s in the Magic Valley. Stanley doesn't make it out of the 40s tomorrow. And with that wind, it will feel quite a bit cooler than we've been in days past. After that, though, the wind backs off and temperatures warmer back into the 80s starting on Friday.
right, looking at your comments, we have Bob who says he credits the mail-in votes and how they do a great job. He said he mailed his in at their bins, and later they called him back saying they forgot to check something. They told me I could come down and vote in person, or they would send him a new ballot. And he says they're checking him quite well. That's a good example of how it should work, hopefully. All right, hopefully you get out there and have a good day. We'll see you back all here tomorrow.